My name is Sarah Woodbury. I'm here with my husband Dan today to talk about the royal Llysoedd of Gwynedd.
So last week you talked about Dinas Bran, and at the end of the video you mentioned that it was a llys. What is a llys and why are we talking about it?
A llys is a royal palace. Dinas Bran was in Powys, but we're going to talk about Gwynedd today, in particular because those are the ones I know most about. But to the outsider, Gwynedd looks like a small place. But to the kings and princes who had to walk or ride on horseback around their country, they needed an effective way to administer to the whole country. And they did this by dividing Gwynedd into 22 commotes, which are basically small counties. And each commote had a llys, a royal palace, from which to administer to the local region.
So it was sort of like a county courthouse.
It was very much like a county courthouse. The fact of even having llys is laid down in Welsh law, as well as what they looked like, because they also had to house the prince and his retinue. So a llys was required to include a great hall, a chamber for the prince, a food house, a stable, a porch, a barn, a kiln, a dormitory, and a privy, a tibach, a bathroom for the prince.
So was there a capital or a main seat?
Technically, no. All 22 commotes were equal. But in practice, very likely, yes. And the best candidate for that may be Aber, which is located on the north coast of Gwynedd between Bangor and Conwy. It is from there, which at the time was called Garth Celyn, that Llywelyn ap Griffith, the last Prince of Wales, wrote his last letters to Archbishop Peckham and King Edward before his death in 1282. The reason we know so little about these llys, even though they obviously played a very important role in governing Gwynedd in the Middle Ages, is because when Edward conquered the country, he destroyed many of them. To the point that, for example, the llys near Harlech Castle was dismantled, the Great Hall was dismantled and rebuilt inside Harlech. In the same way, the beams at Aberfrau that supported the roof of the Great Hall were incorporated into Carnarvon. At Beaumaris, the llys and the entire town was destroyed. All the people in the town were moved elsewhere to build Beaumaris Castle. And finally, at like Conwy, where Conwy Castle is today, was a monastery and another llys called Aberconwy. Both were destroyed to build the castle, except for one wall of the Great Hall, which was incorporated into the current town wall, which you can see today if you walk along the wall. There's a placard that says, "Here was Llywelyn llys." The llys we know most about, particularly in terms of structure, is Llys Rhosyr, which is located in southeastern Anglesey. About a quarter of it has been excavated. Two of the buildings that were discovered there have been recreated in St. Fagans, which is the National Museums of Wales outside Cardiff, and you can go and see them as well.
So what was the difference between a llys and a castle?
When Edward conquered Wales, he did refurbish Llywelyn's castles, Criccieth, for example, or Castell The llys were not castles. They were barely even fortified. I mean, potentially the walls were high enough to keep out roaming cattle. But what this speaks to is the difference between having a Welsh Prince of Wales and a Norman conquering king. Llywelyn didn't need to protect himself from his people. Edward did. And so that is why Edward built the castles, because he was faced with a hostile populace. Which leads us to what we're going to talk about next week, going back a couple of hundred years to the initial Norman conquest of England in 1066. If you like this video, click on the playlist or subscribe to my channel. There'll be a new video next week. And if you want to check out my books, click on the link to my webpage.